I'd like to thank Martin Norton for inviting me here this morning to speak on supporting innovation and change to the AT model for direct payment. This being the International Day for Persons with Disabilities, it's a great honour to be invited here to speak to you. I propose to provide you with a profile of, I'm the Area Operations Manager in HSC North Dublin. I just want to give you a short profile of the area and a brief run through of policy documentation relating to person-centredness and living independently that supports the model, the AT model, and an overview of the collaboration between the HSC and AT and their direct payments pilot, which commenced in 2010, and issues for the future. Our area runs up to the Loudmead border, and it comes down then to Howth and across down to Darndale and Raheny. We have a population of 244,324. 33% of our population have GMS cards, and 2% are eligible for GP visit cards. And 7.4% of the population are people with disabilities. Just to say something about our activity in disability services, we have 292 home care packages assigned to persons with disabilities in the area, and we have 89 private residential placements, and we have a budget of 50.2 million. Looking at policy documentation that supports the AT model, I know you're all very familiar with Article 19 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which states that people with disabilities can live independently and be included in the community with choices equal to others. We have our programme for government for 2011 to 2016, commits to the introduction of personalised budgets for disability services. We have the national strategy, the National Disability Strategy, and time to move on from congregated settings. We also have the HSC's new directions, Person Support Services for Adults with Disability report. And that states person support services for adults with disabilities underpinned by core values of person-centredness, community inclusion and active citizenship and quality. Further policy documentation, the National Disability Association issued their Promoting Inclusion and Participation Strategic Plan in 2013-2015. They had 4 strategic priorities, and in particular their strategic priority 2 outlines the National Disability Authority's policy advice based on research evidence and on learning from other jurisdictions is that better outcomes for people with disabilities can be achieved by refocusing the current spending and orientation of disability services away from block funding of providers and towards a more personalised approach. But to move on to value for money, the policy review on disability services in Ireland approved by the government decision of the 17th of July 2012. This is where we're at, and this is the only show in town in relation to this model going forward for the HSC. And we can go into it in greater detail, but there's great momentum around implementation of the VFM review, and the steering group project initiation document was published in September 2014. They have now established working groups, and there are 6 working groups, and of particular interest to this model is Working Group 1, and we can go into that in more detail later. Working Group 1 relates to person-centred model of services and supports strategic planning, and we consider it, as I say, as it's pertinent to the demonstration project and demonstration projects under evaluation. Working Group 2, person-centred model. I'm sorry, I'm not keeping up with myself here. Working Group 2, person-centred model of services and supports, implementation, oversight and support. Group 3, people with disabilities and community involvement. Group 4, quality and standards, and Group 5, management and information systems. I represent the HSC on Group 5 along with the disability manager for Cavan Monaghan. That group is also looking at a single assessments tool for disability. Now, if we go back to Working Group 1 and their subgroup 2 in that working group, it's about evaluation process, service delivery models and demonstration projects. And the terms of reference, I just mentioned a few points in them. Develop the baseline data and comprehensive evaluation process to evaluate existing services and new demonstration projects. and assess suitability for wider application. Also, the work will involve a statement of current projects, and the evaluation of these projects and their subsequent learning will inform the development of alternative service options. And that's where we need to be placed in terms of developing the good work that's been done through this model that we have in North Dublin. And then, based on the output of the work outlined above and the input from the other working groups, an implementation plan will be developed, taking account of any policy appraisal, the scale of organisational change and associated capacity constraints. Now, the Áisina Takiíochta model for direct payments and the HSE's collaboration with AT during the pilot phase and subsequently, if we could just bring ourselves around to that. The model undertakes to support people. We've heard this morning, and I know it's probably a repetition for you, but I think I took this from the introduction to Áisina Takiíochta that was published in 2014. Supports people with disability to move away from dependency on service providers and to gain control over their own budgets, their own services, and ultimately their own lives. By self-managing and taking new responsibilities, our leaders move from being passive users of services to becoming active business people in the community. Now, just to bring you down through the timeline in relation to the AT direct project payments pilot. A few years prior, I suppose 2010 was key, Martin, in relation to this project. And a few years prior to 2010, a number of people with significant disabilities were looking to move their service to a direct payments type of operation. And in the lead up to 2010, when Genio got involved, the HSE in North Dublin had agreed to support the model. So October 2010, Genio provided funding to AT in the sum of €60,000 to support 5 individuals to establish a system for managing their own funding and directing their own supports. The AT then proceeded to establish a pilot system of direct payments with 4 personal assistants, with AT as the proposed intermediary who facilitates the financial transfer of funds from the HSE to the individual leaders by itself negotiating the overall SLA with the HSE and a grant aid agreement with each leader. AT submitted a business plan to HSE North Dublin in March 2011, and successful discussions were held with the regional specialist for disabilities and the disability manager in North Dublin. They also established a pilot monitoring group, and the membership comprised representatives from Áisina Takiíochta and the Irish Wheelchair Association and HSE North Dublin. And that first meeting was held in November 2011. For a period during 2012, in order to deal with a few issues, the pilot was suspended, and the issues included TUPE arrangements for the Irish Wheelchair Association PAs that would have transferred over, who were undertaking the work on the pilot. An evaluation and risk assessment incorporating finance, HR, contingency arrangements was submitted to the HSE in February 2013. And this described AT's governance arrangements, operating procedures and its planning and financial reporting. And subsequently there was a meeting then between AT and key senior managers in North Dublin and SORS. And great news, in March 2013, HSE North Dublin agreed to enter into a service level agreement with AT for the clients that were current to the service at the time, thereby bringing the pilot phase to a successful conclusion, and that was a great sense of celebration around that. Martin, I think you'll agree. So post-pilot phase, where are we? Further funding was secured from Genio, 50,000, in addition to financial support from the National Lottery and funding from membership subscriptions. AT currently has 21 members, with an additional 5 joining in January 2015. In order to be sustainable and supported by, then to be sustainable, you have to be supported by efficiencies of scale. AT needs to have 50 leaders, isn't that right, Martin, on board? And you're hoping to have achieved that by the end of 2015, early 2016. They have developed training programmes. They have a virtual office and online hub for members, And HSE North Dublin continues to support the model and currently funding 18,972 hours per annum at a cost of 355,123. This is a good example of where disability service wants to be. And we're very fortunate that there was no cut to PA hours during 2014. Now, the future, I suppose there's a few issues. I heard a lady there this morning talking about capacity, legal capacity and consent. There is, I don't know why you should, yeah, if you go down there's legal capacity, second last point there. The Citizens Information Board did a submission dated November 2011, and it is an excellent submission, and under a number of headings they go into a lot of detail and what the issues are. It's a very supportive document for this model. And they said under legal capacity it is critically important that any individualised funding mechanism that is introduced is clarified and the necessary legal provisions, including supported decision making, is put in place to protect individuals who are deemed not to have capacity to enter into contractual service arrangements. And we know that there's an assisted decision making capacity bill of 2013 making its way through, but I know we're not near having a conclusion to that or legislation. If I go back up to the top there, it needs to be embedded in legislation, rights to direct payments. There's no right or legislation regarding direct payments for disabilities. That needs to be embedded. The VFM governance document, HSE framework for implementation, we need to work through that and work with it. We have a model of good practice, and through that working group 1 under VFM, they will be looking at models of good practice and evaluating them. There's a lot of learning from what we've done so far, Martin. I take it that you'll be able to share. Should you be in a position that in the future that this model becomes a demonstration model. Then, as I say, there's the sustainability of the AT model. We need to have efficiencies. The selective application, it may not suit every person using PAs, and that needs to be decided by the individual themselves. And then, of course, from the HSE's perspective, there's the continuing fiscal and financial challenges, and economic challenges. But VFM acknowledges it would not be feasible for all assessed needs to be met in full by the HSE in the context of competing resources. And that, unfortunately, is the world we're living in, but we do our best. Just to finish, in VFM, I think it's chapter 7, the HSE should drive migration towards a person-centred model of services and supports through the service level agreement process. Demonstration projects should be initiated by service providers as proof of concept and run in parallel with current services and their suitability for wider applications subsequently evaluated. I think AT is in a very good position to be part of the process and support persons with disability, and as Mairead Wood said this morning, take a jump into independence. So thank you very much.